testimony this morning. It would be God will see me through. My life started many, many years ago. I won't tell you how many, and Pastor, I will tell your mama. But I was born one rainy morning in June in a little bitty farm, dirt farm. And I had a 3-year-old sister at the time. Of course, I didn't know it. But my mother and dad wanted a boy. Well, they got their boy. And they were so happy. But then the doctor says, wait, wait, wait. There's another. And my mother has always told me that I had to come tagging along. So that was okay. That was okay. I had a good life. But we moved around a lot. We were very poor, very, very poor. And my daddy, it was at the end of the Depression, you know, for them. And my daddy tried to find work. And I remember the very first time I can remember back, we lived in Arp, Texas. We moved 2 or 3 times when we lived in Arp. Then I got to start to school in Arp. And then we moved over to Longview, a couple of places there. I started to 2 different schools in Longview. Then we started a school in Kilgore. And finally someone told Daddy that he could probably get a job in Houston. So Daddy came to Houston, and he did find a job. And he found us a house to live in. And Mother hired somebody to drive us down and bring the kids with them. Of course, there wasn't very much to move, but one truck did it. But we moved to a little house over in the Heights, and thank God, he got a house right across the street from a family that had 4 boys. And the oldest was 10 years old, and I was 7. And that was the cutest little boy I had ever seen. But little did I know that 10 years later he would be my husband. But we started to school in 1st grade, and I got to go all the way through school in the elementary school. I loved it. And it wasn't long after we moved there that we decided to start to church and Sunday school, and it was my very first time to go to church and Sunday school. And I loved it. I just really loved my time there on Cordell Street in Houston, over in Heights. At that time, Big Garland, we called him. I have a son named Garland, but we called him Big Garland. He was my secret boyfriend. I thought he was the best thing that ever happened. When I was 14, Daddy decided to move over off of Airline in North Houston, and oh, I hated it. I just thought I would die because I had to leave my friends. I had to leave my Sunday school and my church. That was the thing that hurt the most. So we moved over there off of Airline, and it didn't take me long to find friends. And then I started the Bethel Baptist Church. A lot of you know there's the Bethel Baptist Church on Tidwell. And so I found a lot of friends there. And I went on to Jeff Davis High School, and I started working. And I would get out of school and run just as hard as I could down to North Main and catch the bus downtown and to my jobs. And, it was quite a chore. It was a big chore for a young kid in school trying to work and go to school and stay in church and everything. Well, Miss Holder, Big Garland's mother, she called me one day and she says, Garland wants me to send him your address. Is that okay? And I says, oh, by all means, that's fantastic. So we started writing one another. And I was 17 and just thrilled to death. And through those letters, he asked me to marry him. And he wrote my daddy a letter and asked if he could ask me to marry him. My daddy carried that letter until it wore out. But still had a year and a half. He joined the Navy. That's when he started writing from the Navy. He was in the Korean War. And he was over in Korea on a battleship. And the USS Blue, some of you guys that served in the Korean War would probably remember. And after we married, we had 11 days and we had to go back out to San Diego. Well, that was the first time I'd been away from home, and that was pretty hard. But we found friends and we found church, and he had to go back over to Japan for a little while. And when he came back, we stayed in San Diego, and after he got out, well, we had a little boy while we were there. We got a baby boy. And then we moved back to Houston after he came out of the Navy. And that was the worst thing we could have possibly done. It was very rocky along that time, but we did get to go back to Emmanuel Baptist Church. And then he decided that we just had to go back to California. And I said, why? And he told me that the Lord had called him to preach. And I says, oh no, there's no way. I says, he didn't call me to be a pastor's wife. And I didn't think that I could possibly be a pastor's wife. Those are big shoes to fill, believe me. So anyway, he wanted to go back to California and go to school. And I says, do you have to? There's schools here. So we went to Marshall, Texas. And I think it's East Texas Baptist College up there. And we hung out there for 2 or 3 days. And I said, I don't like this place. I just don't like this place. So we came on back to Houston, and he says, well, the only other thing we can do is to go to California. I said, okay, so we went back to San Diego. Well, we settled there for a little while, and while we were there, we had our little girl, and he was working 2 jobs at the El Coronado Hotel and at the Carnation Dairy. Well, while he was at the dairy, he got his hand caught in the conveyor belt and almost ripped his finger off. He went through surgery. Now, I couldn't drive. I was home with the 2 babies. There was no way I could get to him. And, of course, we don't have cell phones. Doing good to have a telephone in the house. But anyway, he had a long recovery with a cast up to his elbow. And he told me one day he was very, very depressed. He says, if I don't go to school, he says, I think I'll die because the Lord is calling me to preach. So I said, okay. So while his hand was all in a cast and everything, we moved to Riverside, California. And I loved it. I just fell in love with the school up there and everything. We went to California Baptist College. I was taking Bible courses. Of course, I couldn't enroll in school right at that time because I had babies. And he went on, and he loved his school and everything. And in the meantime, he taught me to drive. I did real well until I knocked a mailbox down. And you'll never in your life guess whose mailbox it was. It was the pastor of the church. And need I say that the whole church found out about it. And I was so embarrassed. Of course, now you have to remember I was 21 and I was just embarrassed about everything that came along because I was very shy, if you can believe that. But anyway, his hand got better, and our life was just great. It was just great. We had another little girl in 1960. Beautiful, beautiful little dark-haired girl. This time I had 2 blondes before. And everything was going great until January 1961. My whole world turned upside down. One morning, we were rocking along just as happy as we could be. He had started a janitorial service, and we had a laundromat that he started, so we had 2 jobs that it was ours that we had to take care of. and he was on his way to school that morning, and my little boy now was in the 1st grade. And he said, Mommy, you think you could take this a letter to the mailbox in Riverside? He says, it has to go out today. And I says, oh, I think I can do that. So I took my little boy to school, had my 2 little girls in the car with me. We went to Riverside. And on the way back, we never shut up. We were always singing and playing and talking constantly. Well, a car decided he was going to make a U-turn, and he just slammed on his brakes right in front of me. Well, I hit him, and we were on a bridge that one way it was a big, deep ravine, and the other way was a retaining wall on the side of the mountain. Well, when I hit him, it hit my tires and reflected me over to the barricade that kept me from going over the ravine, and it spun me right back through 4 lanes of traffic into the retainer wall on the mountain. Well, I was in a Volkswagen bus, and my head hit the metal above the windshield. And when they got to us, they thought I was dead. My eyes were open and I was laying out, you know. But their attention went to the 2 girls. And they put me on the floor of the ambulance and covered me up. They had to get the girls to the hospital, so they took us to the hospital, and the doctor found that I wasn't dead, that I was alive. But I was in a coma for 3 days before they could do surgery to lift the bones off of my brain and eye. I was pretty bunged up. But I was recovering, and it was going to take about 2 weeks. So my mother came from Houston to come out there and take care of me, to take care of the children. And she told me that she was in the hallway and she could hear Garland praying in the bedroom. And he was saying, Lord, if you really need one of us, please take me. My babies need their mom so bad. Well, we walked along for a month and a half, and my son had the mumps. The teacher brought him to school, and he came home with them. Well, we didn't worry about it. I had the mumps, and so had Garland had the mumps. Well, we weren't careful. We loved him, we rocked him, we kissed him, we took care of him. Well, the 13th of March, he came down with the mumps. He went to the doctor. The doctor said, sure, he has the mumps. And I said, he had the mumps on both sides when he was 16. How could he have the mumps? Anyway, he, on Wednesday, now this was Monday, he went to the doctor. And on Wednesday, I worked all day because I knew I was going to have to take care of everything, you know, that he couldn't take care of. And remember, I had the wreck in January, so I wasn't fully recovered, really. And thank God we had a couple of guys working for us. But I still had to be with them because we were bonded, and we had to, one of us had to be with the guys that were working at this time. So I would get up and go with them. And on Wednesday morning, I got a day off, and I stayed up and I got all the washing done and got everything done so that I could go on back to work. And he had a headache all day. And my 13-month-old kept calling for Daddy and looking for Daddy. She knew he was there somewhere, but she couldn't find him. Well, he called my name about 7 o'clock, and she heard him, and oh, she just ran to the door. And when I opened the door, she saw her chance, and in she went. She had some blocks in her hands, and she threw them up on the bed, and she said, love you, Daddy. And he says, you look so tired. He says, please put the kids to bed now. They can go to bed early, because you're going to have to get up in the morning and go to work. And so I said, okay. And I picked up my baby, let her kiss her daddy, walked out. And the 2 others were in the living room watching the Flintstones. And it was their show. And so I said, okay, you've got 15 more minutes to watch the Flintstones. And I said, that's okay, but you're going to have to go to bed because Mommy has to go to work and Daddy doesn't feel well. And I diapered the baby, picked her up, walked in the bedroom, and the Lord had taken Big Garland home. It was rough. It was very rough. It just, everything just tilted. And so the friends came in from the church and everything. I don't remember a whole lot about that. But what I do remember is my daddy walking through that front door. A couple of days later, they came out there. And all I could see was my daddy in the living room. And he took care of me. We brought his body back to Houston and buried him out at Forest Park. And I had to go back to California. There was no other way. So my daddy drove me back out there in 2 weeks. And when they left, that was the hardest thing in the world because it was all on my shoulders and my 3 precious babies. How in the world was I able to feed my babies and take care of my babies and work? That was in April, the 1st of April. And in June, I was rocking along, trying my best. But I had a real hard time. And our doctor was also a friend of ours, and he was always coming by and checking on us. And he called my daddy, and he says, I'm afraid for June. You have to come out here and take care of June and the kids. So they came out there. My twin brother, my daddy, and my mother, they all drove different cars, and they took mine and loaded them up, locked my house, and drove me back home. I turned away from the Lord. How could he take my husband who dreamed of being a preacher, had such big plans of going on to the Golden Gate Seminary? But he took it. It took me a year to be able to pick up my Bible and to say anything to the Lord except, why? I told the pastor that my first question was going to be why. And do you know, I realized when we step through those gates, there won't be any whys. We will know the answer. We will know the answer. But thank God I've had people through the church. But God has seen me through so much, so very much. I lost my husband March the 15th, 1961 at the age of 28. My twin brother in 1969. At the age of 33. My daddy was murdered in 1981. He was in a coma for 2 months before he died. And I would stay at the hospital all the time. My second husband passed away in 2007. Many of you knew him, Rhoads. God has seen me through it all and carried me. When I had no strength, he picked me up and carried me through life. And yes, my brothers and sisters, he can still see you through everything. My name is Rhoads, and I am second.